Yes, please. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, the defense counsel has just asked you to consider Travis Reinking's perception. They described it as his extreme mental emotional disturbance, described him as being untethered. I submit to you that the evidence and the proof in this case that came in during the trial does not support that request to you. You heard testimony and evidence that a year before this, a year before April 22nd, 2018, Travis Reinking was writing in his journal about sniping people at a Nelly concert. There was no justification, no excuse, no sign from God. He was writing about what he wanted to do. He wrote, "I'm sure people would wonder why I did it, and then I would have writing and notes to explain it all. I would have people that I called out for help when no one did a damn thing." He is writing and planning this and keeps writing these journals where he keeps describing that he wants to commit a mass murder. Travis Reinking's perception was this was something that he planned to do. This was something he wanted to do. He even wrote that I want to write the book in a way that makes other people question my sanity. This is not untethered. His perception is exactly what he ended up happening. He wanted his journals to be read. He's trying to make a statement. He went to the Waffle House that night to punish people that had done nothing to him. Innocent victims. Mr. Reinking wrote in his journal, and Dr. Eisen testified that he wrote, "I want to start shooting cops, trying to plan this as best I can to have as much impact as I can. Hopefully, I will have my book out by then, and I will become a martyr." A martyr. Travis Reinking went up there that night not with the intent to murder the 4 innocent victims that he murdered. He went there with the intent to murder every single one of them. All 22 people. He didn't take 3 bullets. He took 90. Travis Reinking was planning for the 10 survivors that you can see here in this picture. He was planning to kill all of them. Trey Sneed, he was not supposed to make it out of there. Mike Garth, he's not supposed to make it out. Sharita Henderson, Travis Reinking definitely wasn't planning on her surviving when he looked her in the eye as he fired 3 rounds from his rifle into her body. He wasn't expecting her to make it home to her mom and dad. That is not what he intended. James Shaw Jr., he was not supposed to make it out of there. Brennan McMurray was not supposed to survive. Kayla Shaw, Michael Shaw, the cook that's stacking the plates up that James and Brennan were joking about in these moments. Douglas Lauderdale, who's at the cash register. He wasn't supposed to live. Alexis Lane. Akilah Dasilva, Shondell Brooks, Mr. Reinking intended for her to lose both of her sons. He intended to take both of her sons from her that night. There are 8 survivors in this image. The Cordovas in the corner, Mr. Wiggins standing there in the plaid shirt, the Waffle House employees, Wanda White, Virginia Stanley. You can see Shanita Waggoner there in the very corner. The Wagners, he did not intend for their daughter to ever come home again. Eight additional people. This is 18 lives. That was his perception. That is what he intended to do. I submit to you that it is this moment right here, when that glass breaks through and hits Kayla Shaw in the face, that is what Travis Reinking did not intend. He did not intend for that to happen, because that allowed them those precious seconds to be able to survive. It's this moment where they are able to scramble. You heard the victim's testimony, the witness's testimony in the trial, that it wasn't until that glass broke that they really understood what was happening outside. And it was in that moment that you see the victims scrambling, running. The survivors that made it, it's because of this moment. And Travis Reinking intended for that bullet to hit Joe Perez Jr. He described that in the handwritten journal that was submitted to you. He missed. He intended for that bullet to go in to the body of Joe Perez Jr. It was not supposed to do this. It was not supposed to give them time to get away. This moment, the reason that we are here today, and we are only here asking for sentencing on 4 homicide victims, is because James Shaw Jr. was not killed sitting with his back to that door. He had time to run that Travis Reinking did not intend for him to have. That was never his intention. His intention absolutely was to catch everyone unaware. He wanted to have as much impact as possible. Travis Reinking did not want a single one of these people to be able to run. In the written journals that were submitted to you, there were several references of Travis Reinking. Even if it cost my life here, which I assumed it would, I felt that there was no point in continuing life here. I hate to mentally prepare myself for death or rebirth. Travis Reinking was not intending to ever walk home. He went there to murder every single person in that building. He had this concept that that could somehow make him a martyr. But when you look at what the defense is asking you to do, saying it's not possible to apply reason and logic to crazy, to look at Travis Reinking's perception, I ask you to look to the evidence submitted in this trial. Travis Reinking described murdering Joey Perez and Taurean Sanderlin. He described it was quite uneventful. That is Travis Reinking's perception based on the evidence submitted to you. It didn't look anything like in movies or video games where blood spatters in a mist or over the glass behind him. It was quite uneventful in comparison. That was until I noticed the bullet holes in the glass. That's when I knew it was real. And Travis Reinking's perception, well, I already went this far, might as well head inside and finish what I came here to do. He went there to murder every single last person. He never intended for Mr. Shaw to have that moment, that opportunity to make that decision that his life was worth fighting for. He did not intend for that to happen. He intended for it to be so much worse. I submit to you that is not a mitigating factor that should be considered. The defense argued that your decision about this sentence would not make the families whole. Nothing will ever, ever make these families whole again. But a sentence of anything less than life without the possibility of parole, that is saying that he just killed Joe Perez Jr. He would get life with the possibility of parole. If he had just only killed Taurean Sanderlin, that would be the punishment based on your verdict. If he just killed Akilah Dasilva, that would be the punishment based on your verdict. If he had just killed DeEbony Groves, that would be his minimum punishment based on your verdict. A verdict that is not life without the possibility of parole, without release, is the only verdict that can bring some justice to the fact that it is not one life lost, that it is 4, and that this man intended to take so much more. And because of that, we ask that you impose the maximum verdict that you can, which is life without the possibility of parole. Thank you.
I'm going to leave it up to you.